The crystal water glass slips from my fingers. Time stretches like taffy as it falls, catching the dining room light spinning once, twice, before it shatters against the hardwood floor. The sound cracks through the silence like a gunshot. Freya stands frozen across the table. Her mouth is still twisted in that sneer, but her face has gone white as chalk. Actually white. The kind of pale where you can see the blood draining south, leaving nothing but shock behind. What rent? Her voice comes out thin, hollow, like she's speaking through a tunnel. My son Maddox grabs his wife's arm. His fingers dig into her designer blazer, the navy one she wore to show off, the one that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Mom, what are you talking about? I'm Darlene Thornhill. I'm 64 years old, and I just broke 3 years of silence with 5 words I can't take back. The quiet in this dining room feels thick enough to choke on. I can hear the grandfather clock in the hallway, tick, 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 each second stretching out forever. The water from the broken glass spreads across the floor in a slow, creeping puddle. Nobody moves to clean it up. Nobody moves at all. Hi, viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. I've spent 3 years listening to this woman's comments. 3 years of biting my tongue so hard I'm surprised it's not scarred. 3 years of watching Freya parade around in clothes that cost more than my car payment, making remarks about my dated furniture and my simple lifestyle. 3 years of being treated like hired help in my own home. But tonight, something inside me snapped clean in half. It started the way these Sunday dinners always start. Freya arrived 45 minutes late. Her phone was glued to her ear, her voice carrying through my front door before she even stepped inside. The traffic in this town is absolutely medieval, she'd said to whoever was on the other end. Some friend from her yoga class, probably. Someone who'd never driven through actual city traffic. She barely glanced at the pot roast I'd spent all afternoon preparing. Didn't even look at the table I'd set with my good china. The plates with the tiny blue flowers that Virgil and I picked out 32 years ago on our anniversary trip to Vermont. Instead, she launched into this long story about some celebrity chef's restaurant she and Maddox visited last weekend. The truffle risotto was divine, she'd said, examining her French manicure like it was more interesting than anything on my table. Nothing like the heavy peasant food some people still make. Peasant food. She called my pot roast peasant food. I'd gripped my fork tighter. The metal pressed into my palm hard enough to leave marks, but I didn't say anything. I never say anything. Maddox had shifted in his chair, that uncomfortable shifting he does now whenever Freya starts up. The pot roast looks great, Mom, he'd offered. Weak. His voice was so weak. Freya had waved her hand dismissively. Oh, I'm sure it's fine if you like that sort of thing. Then came the comments about the house. This house that Virgil and I bought with our last dollar and our biggest dreams. This house where we raised Maddox, where we celebrated every Christmas and birthday, where Virgil took his last breath 6 years ago with my hand in his. You know, Darlene, Freya had said, leaning back in her chair like she owned the place, you really should update this kitchen. These cabinets scream 1985. I know a wonderful contractor who could drag this place into the current century. My hands had started trembling, just slightly, just enough that I had to set down my water glass before I dropped it. Maddox had tried again. The house is fine, Freya. Fine if you like living in a time capsule, she'd muttered. Loud enough for everyone to hear. She always makes sure everyone hears. I'd stared at those cabinets, the oak ones with the brass handles. Virgil and I had picked them out together from a catalog, sitting at this very table, circling options with a red pen. We'd installed them ourselves one summer, working late into the evenings because we couldn't afford to hire anyone. Maddox was 10. He'd handed us screws and told us jokes to make us laugh when we got frustrated. Every cabinet, every handle, every hinge, chosen with love. But Freya wouldn't know about any of that. She'd never asked. Never cared to know anything about me beyond what she could criticize. When we started clearing the table, I'd made the mistake of mentioning the old photos I'd found in the attic. Pictures of Virgil from when we first met. I'd wanted to frame one for Maddox, his father in his plumbing uniform smiling that crooked smile, holding baby Maddox for the first time. Freya had rolled her eyes so hard I was surprised they didn't fall out of her head, Oh God, but not another shrine to St. Virgil, she'd said. Maddox, your mother really needs to move on. It's been 6 years. The air had gone out of my lungs. Freya, that's enough, Maddox had said. But his voice was tired. So tired. Like he'd given up defending me years ago and was just going through the motions now. I just thought, I'd started. You know what your problem is, Darlene? Freya had interrupted. She'd leaned against my counter with her arms crossed, her diamond bracelet catching the light. The bracelet Maddox bought her for their anniversary. The one he'd called me about, worried it was too expensive, asking if he should really spend that much. I'd told him to buy it if it made her happy. You're stuck in the past, Freya had continued. You cling to all this old stuff. Old photos, old furniture, old memories. You're not even half the woman my mother was. She knows how to live. She's vibrant and modern, and that's when the words came out of my mouth. Then she can start paying your rent. Now Freya's standing there with her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. The color hasn't come back to her face. If anything, she's gone paler. What rent? She repeats. Her voice climbs higher, shrill. What are you talking about? I stand slowly. My chair scrapes against the floor, a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. My heart is hammering against my ribs so hard I can feel it in my throat. But my voice comes out steady, calm, like I'm commenting on the weather. The rent on that fancy townhouse you two live in, I say. You know, the one in Riverside Heights with the doorman and the rooftop terrace? The one you love to post about on social media? Maddox has gone pale too. His hand is still gripping Freya's arm, but now he's the one who needs support. Mom, you own that building? Freya's words come out strangled. I let the silence hang there for 3 seconds. 4, 5. I own 3 buildings in Riverside Heights, I say quietly, including the one you live in. The grandfather clock chimes. Once, twice, 3 times. It's 8 o'clock, and my whole world just shifted on its axis. Unit 4C, I add, if I'm remembering correctly. 3 years ago, Maddox brought Freya to Sunday dinner for the first time. She'd walked through my front door in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Her heels clicked on my hardwood floors, the ones Virgil refinished by hand the year before he died. What a charming house, she'd said, her eyes sweeping over the living room. Very vintage. I'd smiled, extended my hand, tried not to notice the way she'd hesitated before shaking it, like she was afraid my ordinary might rub off on her. Maddox had stars in his eyes, the kind of stars that make you blind to everything else. Isn't she amazing, Mom? She's lovely, I'd said. And I'd meant it, because Maddox loved her, and that was enough for me. The first few dinners, I'd chalked up Freya's comments to nervousness. New relationship jitters, the pressure of meeting your boyfriend's mother. She'd made little remarks here and there. Interesting decorating choices, or you still have a landline. But nothing too awful, nothing I couldn't brush off. Then they got engaged. The wedding was at some country club I'd never heard of. Freya's mother, Cordelia, planned the whole thing. I wasn't asked for input, wasn't asked to help with anything except showing up and smiling. Which I did, because it was Maddox's day, and I wanted him to be happy. I'd worn my best dress, a simple navy blue one I'd bought for Virgil's funeral and hadn't worn since. Freya had taken one look at me and said, "Oh, Darlene, you didn't have to dress up so much. It's just a wedding." Just a wedding. Her wedding. Cordelia had swept in before I could respond. "Freya, darling, the photographer needs you." Then she'd looked at me with this pitying smile. "The mother of the groom section is over there. Just follow the signs." I'd sat by myself in the 3rd row, surrounded by strangers. After the wedding, the comments got worse. Or maybe I just started hearing them differently. My mother would never serve store-bought rolls, Freya had said at Thanksgiving. I'd spent 2 days making those rolls from scratch. My mother always uses cloth napkins. Paper is so wasteful, she'd said at Christmas. I'd pulled out the cloth napkins the next time. She'd complained they were outdated. Every month, the dinners felt more like endurance tests. How much could I take before I broke? How many insults could I swallow before I choked? The worst part was watching Maddox. Watching my strong, smart, kind son turn into this shell. This man who apologized for his mother's cooking, his mother's house, his mother's existence. Who stopped defending me because it was easier to just let Freya talk. 6 months after the wedding, Maddox called me. "Mom, we found an apartment." My heart had lifted. "That's wonderful, honey." "Where?" "Riverside Heights. It's this amazing building with a doorman and everything. Unit 4C. The view is incredible." My heart had stopped lifting. It had dropped straight to my stomach. I'd recognized the address immediately. 2847 Riverside Boulevard. The second building Virgil and I had purchased, back when property values were low and nobody wanted to invest in that neighborhood. We'd held on to it through the rough years, through the renovations, through the slow climb back to desirability. Now it was one of the most sought-after addresses in town. "How much is the rent?" I'd asked, even though I already knew. $1,800 a month. It's a stretch, but we can make it work." 1,800. Market rate was 2,000, but the management company offered move-in specials sometimes. They wouldn't have known Maddox was my son. I'd made sure of that when Virgil and I set up Thornhill Property Management. Made sure our names weren't on anything public. Made sure tenants had no idea who actually owned the buildings. Privacy, Virgil had said, and protection. I could have told Maddox then, could have said, "That's my building, you're renting from me." But something stopped me. Some instinct that said, "Let him do this on his own. Let him earn it. Don't make him feel like he owes you." So I'd said, "That's wonderful, honey. I'm proud of you." And I'd kept my mouth shut for 3 more years. 3 years of sitting at this table listening to Freya compare me to her mother. 3 years of hearing about Cordelia's perfect dinner parties, Cordelia's impeccable taste, Cordelia's modern lifestyle. 3 years of being told in 1,000 different ways that I wasn't good enough. The comments piled up like stones in my chest. "You're still driving that old Honda? My mother just got a BMW." "You don't have a smartphone? How do you survive?" "This couch is so worn. My mother redecorates every 2 years." "You cook everything yourself?" "My mother has a meal service." On and on and on. The thing about small cruelties is they don't kill you all at once. They're death by 1,000 paper cuts. Each one tiny. Each one supposedly not worth making a fuss over. But they add up. They accumulate in your blood until you're poisoned with them. And Maddox just let it happen. "She doesn't mean it that way, Mom," he'd say after Freya left. "She's just particular," he'd offer when I'd look hurt. "Can't you just ignore it?" he'd plead when I'd finally try to talk to him about it. I'd watched my son choose peace over principle, choose his wife's comfort over his mother's dignity. And I'd understood it. I had. You're supposed to stand by your spouse, build a life together. I'd raised him to be a good husband. I just didn't realize it would cost him being a good son. Last month, Freya had been on the phone with one of her friends when I'd walked into the kitchen. She hadn't seen me, hadn't realized I was there. "Oh, she's sweet," Freya had been saying. "But very simple, you know. Lives on a fixed income. Doesn't really understand modern life. Maddox feels obligated to visit, which is kind of him. But honestly, Sunday dinners are such a chore." I'd stood there in my own doorway, holding a bowl of salad, listening to myself be dismissed as a chore. That's when something had started cracking inside me. Not breaking yet, just cracking. Thin lines spreading through my patience like a windshield about to shatter. I'd thought about telling them then, about sitting them down and explaining that their simple landlady was worth more than they'd ever know. That the buildings they admired, the properties they drove past, the businesses they frequented, I owned pieces of all of it. But I'd held back. Because what would that prove? That I had money? That I'd been hiding it? That I'd lied by omission? No, I'd kept quiet because I wanted to believe Freya might change, might grow, might see me as a person instead of a relic. Tonight proved me wrong. The pot roast had been perfect. I'd started it at 2 o'clock, searing the meat in Virgil's old cast iron skillet, the one that's been seasoned so many times it's practically non-stick. I'd used his mother's recipe, the one written in pencil on a stained index card that I keep in the red recipe box by the stove. Carrots, potatoes, onions, fresh thyme from the garden Virgil planted. The garden that's still blooming 15 years later because I tend it like he taught me. The smell had filled the house, rich and warm and exactly like Sunday dinners from when Maddox was little. When it was just the three of us around this table, laughing and talking and being a family. I'd set the table with the good china, the blue flowered plates, the crystal glasses Virgil's mother gave us as a wedding gift. I'd even put out cloth napkins, the cream-colored ones I'd embroidered myself, years ago, when I still had the patience for that kind of thing. My hands had been aching. The arthritis gets worse in the cold, and October's been chilly this year. Each potato I'd peeled had sent little sparks of pain through my knuckles. But I'd pushed through. Because this is what you do for family. You push through. I'd hoped, God, I'd actually hoped, that maybe tonight would be different. Maybe Freya would notice the effort. Maybe she'd say something kind. Maybe we could turn a corner. Then she'd walked in, phone pressed to her ear, talking about someone's yacht party, someone named Brinley who'd just bought a summer house in the Hamptons, someone who had nothing to do with dinner at her mother-in-law's house but was apparently more important. She'd ended the call and looked at the table. Actually looked at it for the first time all evening. Pot roast, she'd said. Flat, like I'd served her cardboard. Your favorite, Maddox had tried. Remember? You said you loved Mom's pot roast. That had been a lie. She'd never said that. But Maddox was trying to build a bridge that Freya kept burning down. Freya had sat down and immediately launched into the story about the celebrity chef. Some guy with a cooking show and 3 Michelin stars. Some restaurant where they'd spent more on one meal than I spend on groceries in a month. The truffle risotto, she'd said, closing her eyes like she was remembering something sacred, was absolutely divine. Light, creamy, perfectly seasoned. Nothing like heavy peasant food some people still make. She'd opened her eyes and looked right at my pot roast when she said it. Peasant food. I'd felt my jaw clench, my molars grinding together. The fork in my hand had been shaking slightly, so I'd set it down carefully on my plate, focused on the small clink of metal against china. I'm sure it was lovely, I'd said, calm, controlled, every word measured. Oh, it was more than lovely, Freya had continued, missing or ignoring the warning in my voice. It was art. Real cooking is an art form, don't you think? Not just throwing ingredients in a pot and hoping for the best. That's when Maddox had finally said something. The pot roast looks great, Mom. Great. Not delicious, not amazing, not, I've been looking forward to this all week like I used to when I was growing up. Just great. Freya had waved her hand like she was swatting away his comment. Oh, I'm sure it's fine if you like that sort of thing. I just think there are more refined options out there, more elevated approaches to dining. Elevated, like my cooking was beneath her. I'd picked up my water glass, taken a long, slow sip, put it back down with exaggerated care. Because if I didn't focus on something simple, something concrete, I was going to say things I couldn't unsay, not yet, not yet. Then Freya had looked around the dining room like she was seeing it for the first time, like she hadn't eaten at this table once a month for 3 years. You know, Darlene, she'd said, using that tone she uses when she's about to offer unsolicited advice, you really should update this kitchen. I'd stopped breathing. These cabinets scream 1985, she'd continued, running her finger along the table's edge. I know a wonderful contractor who could drag this place into the current century, maybe add an island, put in some modern appliances, really open up the space. Drag this place into the current century, like it was stuck somewhere shameful, somewhere backward. The house is fine, Freya, Maddox had said. Weak again, always so weak now. Fine if you like living in a time capsule, Freya had muttered. And that's when the first real crack appeared. Not in me. In the silence I'd been maintaining for 3 years. Because this kitchen wasn't a time capsule. It was a memory capsule. Virgil and I had chosen every single thing in this kitchen together. Every cabinet, every handle, every tile on the backsplash. We'd spread the catalog out on this very table in the summer of 1985. circling options with a red pen, debating whether oak or maple would wear better, whether brass or chrome would look more timeless. We'd picked oak, brass. Timeless, we'd said, classic. We'd installed everything ourselves. Couldn't afford contractors back then. Virgil had worked his plumbing jobs during the day, and we'd worked on the kitchen at night, sometimes until 2 in the morning. Maddox would fall asleep on the couch with sawdust in his hair. I remembered Virgil standing back after we'd hung the last cabinet, his arm around my waist, both of us exhausted and proud. 30 years from now, he'd said, these will still be beautiful. He'd been right. They were still beautiful. Not because they were trendy, not because they were modern, because they were chosen with love and built with our hands and filled with decades of memories. Every scratch on these counters told a story, the burn mark near the stove from when Maddox tried to make me breakfast in bed for Mother's Day and nearly set the kitchen on fire. The dent in the cabinet from when Virgil and I were dancing to old music and he'd spun me too enthusiastically. This wasn't a time capsule. This was a life capsule. But Freya wouldn't know that. She'd never asked about the house's history, never wanted to know why things were the way they were. She just saw old and assumed lesser. I'd sat there staring at my pot roast, feeling the weight of 3 years pressing down on my shoulders. 3 years of swallowed words, 3 years of forced smiles, 3 years of being made to feel small in my own home. Maddox had cleared his throat. Should we eat before it gets cold? We'd started passing dishes in silence. The scrape of serving spoons, the clink of plates, everything careful and polite and completely hollow. That's when I'd made my second mistake of the evening. I'd tried to share something personal, something that mattered to me. I found some old photos in the attic, I'd said. Casual, like it was nothing. Pictures of your father, Maddox, from when you were a baby. I thought I'd frame one for you. There's this beautiful one of him holding you for the first time. He's in his work uniform and he's got that smile. You know the one. Oh God, Freya's voice had cut through my sentence like a knife. Not another shrine to Saint Virgil. The room had gone cold. Actually cold. Like someone had opened a window in the middle of winter. Freya, Maddox had said. Finally, some backbone in his voice. That's enough. Maddox, your mother really needs to move on, Freya had continued, ignoring him completely. It's been 6 years, 6 years. At some point, you have to stop living in the past and join the present. My hands had started shaking, really shaking. I'd pressed them flat against the table to keep them still. I just thought, I'd tried again. You know what your problem is, Darlene? That's when everything stopped. The clock stopped ticking. My heart stopped beating. The whole world narrowed down to Freya's mouth and the words coming out of it. She'd stood up, walked to my counter, leaned against it with her arms crossed and her diamond bracelet catching the light and her perfectly made-up face arranged in an expression of condescending pity. You're stuck in the past. You cling to all this old stuff, old photos, old furniture, old memories. You're not even half the woman my mother was. Half the woman her mother was. She knows how to live, Freya had continued. She's vibrant and modern and then she can start paying your rent. The words had come out of my mouth before I could stop them, before I could think, before I could remember all the reasons I'd kept this secret for 3 years. They just came out, and the glass had slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor, and Freya had gone white as chalk, and now here we are, standing in the wreckage of everything I'd been trying to protect. Unit 4C, I say again. If I'm remembering correctly. Freya's mouth opens, closes, opens again. No sound comes out. Maddox is staring at me like he's never seen me before. Maybe he hasn't. Maybe I've been invisible for 3 years, and he's only now realizing I'm actually here. You own our building? Freya finally manages. I nod slowly. I own 3 buildings in Riverside Heights. Yours is the newest one. Well, newest to my portfolio. Virgil and I bought it in 1998. 1998, Maddox repeats. His voice is barely a whisper. Before I was even in high school. That's right. The water from the broken glass has spread into a wide puddle now. It's reaching the edge of the table, about to drip onto Freya's designer shoes. She doesn't notice. She's too busy processing what I've just told her. The management company, she says. Thornhill Property Management. That's mine, I finish. Well, ours. Virgil started it. I just kept it running after he passed. Freya's face is doing something complicated. Confusion, shock, anger, embarrassment, all of it cycling through her features like a slideshow. But why didn't you tell us? And that's the question, isn't it? Why didn't I tell them? I never planned to tell them. Never wanted them to know. When Virgil died, he left me with more than just memories and a paid-off house. He left me with something most people spend their whole lives trying to build. Security. Real security. The kind that doesn't come from a paycheck or a pension, but from owning things that matter. Things that last. Virgil was a plumber by trade. People saw the work uniform and the toolbox and the van with his name on the side, and they thought they knew him. Thought they knew us. Working class, getting by. Simple folks with simple dreams. They had no idea. Every extra dollar Virgil made went into property. Every bonus, every big job, every piece of overtime. He'd come home with his hands stained and his back aching, and he'd sit at this table with real estate listings spread out in front of him, studying them like they were treasure maps. This one, he'd say, tapping a listing with his pencil. 4 units, needs work, but the bones are good. The neighborhood's coming back. Give it 10 years and it'll be worth triple. He was always right. Always. We bought our first rental property when Maddox was 5. A duplex on the east side that needed new plumbing, which Virgil did himself, and a complete renovation. We lived on rice and beans for 6 months to make that down payment, but it was worth it. We rented both units within a month, and suddenly we had income that didn't depend on Virgil's back holding out or his knees lasting another year. That's when he'd said it. The thing that became our motto, our mission, our whole approach to life. We're not building wealth to show off. We're building it to survive. And we did. One property at a time, one mortgage at a time, one sacrifice at a time. The apartment building in Riverside Heights came later. Much later. After we'd already paid off the duplex and bought 2 more small buildings, Virgil had seen the listing and known immediately it was special. 8 units, solid construction, terrible location at the time. The neighborhood was rough, property values were in the basement, but Virgil saw what it could become. This neighborhood's going to turn around, he'd said. New development coming in, young families moving back to the city. In 20 years, this'll be prime real estate. 15 years, actually, so it only took 15 years for Riverside Heights to become one of the most desirable areas in town. For property values to skyrocket. For people like Freya and Maddox to compete for apartments there. We bought 2 more buildings in that neighborhood over the years. Watched them appreciate. Watched the whole area transform from somewhere you avoided after dark to somewhere you paid premium prices to live. And through it all, we kept quiet. Kept driving our old cars and cooking our own meals and living in our dated house with our time capsule kitchen. Because the wealth wasn't for showing, it was for surviving, for making sure that if anything happened to one of us, the other would be okay. When Virgil got sick, when the cancer came fast and mean and took him in 6 months, I'd understood why he'd been so insistent about building this safety net. I'd watched the medical bills pile up, watched the cost of care drain our savings account, watched everything we'd worked for get consumed by hospital stays and treatments and desperate attempts to buy more time. But the properties stayed. The rental income kept coming. The management company kept running. And when Virgil finally slipped away in our bedroom with my hand in his and Maddox crying in the hallway, I'd known I would be okay. Not happy, not whole, but okay. Financially okay, at least. We're your landlords, I say now, letting the weight of that word settle over the room. Well, technically I am, since Virgil passed. That company you write your rent check to every month? Thornhill Property Management? That's the company Virgil started 30 years ago. I've been running it since he died. Maddox sinks into his chair like his legs won't hold him anymore. His hands are covering his face. I can't see his expression, but I can see his shoulders shaking slightly. Freya's still standing, still pale, still processing. But the management company never said anything. They never told us you were the owner. They're not supposed to, I explain. My voice is steady now, calm, like I'm teaching a class instead of detonating my family. That's the whole point of using a property management company. Privacy, professional boundaries. So tenants don't know who owns the building and owners don't have to deal with tenant issues directly. Tenant issues, Freya repeats. Her voice is getting shrill again. We're not tenants, we're family. You're both, I say simply, but you're my family and you're tenants in my building. Those two things don't cancel each other out. This is insane, Freya says. She's starting to pace now. 3 steps to the left, 3 steps to the right, like she's caged. You've been collecting rent from us for 3 years. 3 years, Darlene, and you never said a word. Yes, I agree. Just like I collect rent from the other 47 tenants across my 3 buildings, it's business. 47 tenants? I watch that number hit her. Watch her brain trying to calculate what that means, how much that's worth. How wrong she's been about everything. 47, Maddox says from behind his hands. Not a question, just a statement. Like he's testing the weight of it. 48 if you count the commercial space in the shopping plaza, I add. But that's a different property, different management structure. The grandfather clock ticks, loud in the silence, each second marking time that can't be taken back. Freya stops pacing, turns to face me directly. How much? She asks. How much are you worth? It's a rude question, the kind of question you're never supposed to ask. But I suppose we're past politeness now, past the careful dance of pretending, past all the rules that kept this family functioning. Enough, I say. Enough that I don't have to justify my life choices to anyone. Enough that I could have retired 10 years ago if I wanted to. Enough that these dated cabinets and this old furniture and this time capsule of a house are my choice, not my limitation. The word limitation lands hard. I watch Freya flinch like I've slapped her. And you just let us think. She can't finish the sentence. Can't quite voice what she's realizing. Let you think what? I ask. Genuinely curious now. That I was some poor widow scraping by on a fixed income? I never said that, Freya. You assumed it. You saw my 12-year-old Honda and my homemade pot roast and my refusal to get a smartphone. And you assumed I couldn't afford anything else. I walk to the kitchen. My knees ache. The arthritis is bad tonight, made worse by standing so long, by the tension, by the weight of this conversation. But I don't let it show on my face. I grab a dish towel and walk back to the dining room, kneeling slowly to clean up the spilled water and broken glass. Careful, Maddox says automatically. You'll cut yourself. I've cleaned up broken glass before, I say gently. I know how to be careful. I pick up each piece slowly. The crystal catches the light, throwing tiny rainbows across the wet floor. This was one of the good glasses, part of the set Virgil's mother gave us. Now there are only 5 left. Virgil and I built something together, I say quietly, still focused on the glass. We worked hard, we saved, we invested smart, and we did it without anyone knowing because we didn't need recognition. We didn't need people to know how much we were worth, we just needed security. We needed to know that if anything happened to either of us, the other would be taken care of. I stand up slowly, holding the wet towel full of broken glass. My knees crack audibly. I walk to the trash can and carefully shake out the shards, listening to them tinkle against the bottom of the bin. That's what real love looks like, Freya, I say, turning to face her. Not fancy restaurants and designer clothes and truffle risotto. It's taking care of each other. Building something that lasts, making sure your person will be okay even when you're gone. Freya's eyes are shining now, tears threatening to spill over. I can't tell if they're tears of shame or anger or shock or some combination of all 3. My mother would never hide something like this from me, she says. Her voice cracks on the word never. Your mother also wouldn't spend 3 years insulting her son's family, I reply. So I suppose we just have different approaches to relationships. It's harsh. I know it's harsh. But it's also true, and I'm done softening truths to make them easier to swallow. Maddox stands abruptly. His chair scrapes across the floor, the same sound mine made earlier, the sound of endings. We should go, he says. Yes, I agree. I think that's best. They gather their things in silence. Freya's hands are trembling as she picks up her designer purse, the one that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Maddox won't look at me. He just moves mechanically, putting on his jacket, finding his keys, going through the motions of leaving. At the door, he finally turns back. Why now? Why tell us now, after all this time? I look at my son, my only child, the boy I raised alone after Virgil died, the man who somehow lost his spine somewhere along the way. The person I love more than anything in this world, even when he disappoints me. Because I'm tired, Maddox, I say simply. I'm tired of being disrespected in my own home. I'm tired of watching you let your wife treat me like I'm worthless. And I'm especially tired of being pitied when I'm one of the most financially secure people you know. I reach out and touch his cheek gently. He's got Virgil's eyes, the same warm brown that used to look at me with so much love. I love you, I say. I will always love you. But I won't be a doormat anymore. Not even for my own son. His eyes fill with tears, real tears, spilling down his cheeks. I'm sorry, he whispers. I know, I say softly. Now go home, think about things. We'll talk when you're ready. I close the door behind them, stand in the hallway listening to their footsteps fade down the porch stairs. Listen to their car doors slam. Listen to the engine start and the sound of them driving away. Then it's just me and the grandfather clock and the quiet of this house that's suddenly very loud. And now I stand in my quiet house for a long time. The grandfather clock ticks, the same clock Virgil restored by hand 40 years ago, spending weeks in the garage with wood polish and tiny screwdrivers and infinite patience. The same clock that's kept time through Maddox's childhood, through Virgil's death, through 3 years of Sunday dinners that felt like slow torture. Tick, tick, tick. I walk through the dining room, looking at it differently now. The table where we just had our confrontation, the chairs that have held so many family dinners, the china cabinet full of dishes that Freya considers outdated, but I consider irreplaceable. Into the kitchen, the dated kitchen with its 1985 cabinets. I run my hand along the oak, feeling the smooth wood under my palm. Each cabinet a memory, each handle a choice Virgil and I made together. This isn't a time capsule. This is a foundation. A foundation built from love and hard work and sacrifice. A foundation solid enough to support me for the rest of my life. I smile. Actually smile. Because Freya was wrong about everything. I'm not stuck in the past. I'm living on what the past built. The phone rings at 9:30. I look at the caller ID. It's a number I don't recognize. But the area code is the same as Freya's mother's. Cordelia. I let it ring. 4 times. 5. It goes to voicemail. A minute later, the voicemail notification beeps. I play it on speaker. Darlene, this is Cordelia Hartman. Her voice is tight, angry, like I've personally insulted her instead of her daughter. I don't know what you said to Freya tonight, but she came home absolutely devastated. Devastated. She's upstairs crying, and Maddox won't tell me what happened. I think you owe us all an explanation for whatever scene you caused. Call me back immediately. I delete the message before it finishes playing. Scene why caused. Like I'm the villain in this story. Like 3 years of insults and condescension and cruelty don't count because I finally responded to them. No, I'm not calling her back. I'm not explaining myself to someone who raised a daughter to treat people the way Freya treats me. I'm not justifying my choices to someone who thinks devastation only counts when it happens to her family. I pour myself a glass of water. A regular glass this time, not the crystal. I'm down to 5 of those now. I sit at the kitchen table and drink it slowly, looking out the window at the backyard where Virgil's garden is barely visible in the darkness. Tomorrow I'll call the property management company. Tomorrow I'll make sure Maddox and Freya's lease renewal offers market rate. No exceptions. No family discounts. Just business. But tonight, I'm just going to sit here in my quiet house and breathe. The next morning, I wake up at 6:30 like always. Make coffee in the same pot I've used for 15 years. Sit at the kitchen table with the newspaper, the actual physical newspaper that gets delivered to my door because I like the feel of paper in my hands and I don't care if Freya thinks that's outdated. At 8 o'clock, I call the property management company. Thornhill Property Management, this is Jasmine speaking. Good morning, Jasmine. This is Darlene Thornhill. Mrs. Thornhill, good morning. What can I do for you? The tenants in Unit 4C at the Riverside Heights building, I say. My voice is steady, businesslike. Their lease is up for renewal in 4 months, correct? I hear typing. Yes, ma'am, February 15th. When you send the renewal offer, make sure it's at current market rate. No exceptions. There's a pause. Jasmine knows I don't usually give specific instructions about individual units. That's what I pay the management company to handle. Current market rate for that unit is $2,000 per month, she says carefully. They're currently paying $1,800 with the move-in special from 3 years ago. I'm aware, I say. Market rate. Yes, ma'am. I'll make a note in the file. Is there anything else? She asks. I look out the window. The morning sun is hitting Virgil's garden, making the late-blooming asters glow purple and pink. He planted those the year before he died. Said they'd bloom every fall long after the summer flowers faded. He was right about that, too. No, I say quietly, that'll be all. I hang up. Sit with my coffee. Wonder if Maddox is awake yet. Wonder if he slept at all last night. Wonder if Freya's still crying or if she's moved on to anger yet. Wonder if I've just destroyed my relationship with my son over principle and pride and 3 years of accumulated hurt. The phone rings, Maddox's number this time. I let it ring 3 times before I answer. Hello. Mom, his voice is rough like he's been up all night. Can we talk? Of course. Not on the phone, in person. Can I come over? Alone? Alone, without Freya. Yes, I say, when? Now, I'm already in the car. I look around the kitchen, at the breakfast dishes I haven't washed yet, at my coffee cup and newspaper, at the morning light making everything look softer than it felt last night. Come over, I say. He arrives 20 minutes later. I hear his car in the driveway, his footsteps on the porch. He still has a key, but he knocks anyway, like he's not sure he's welcome anymore. I open the door. He looks terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, wearing the same clothes he had on last night. Hi, he says. Hi, come in. We sit at the kitchen table, the same table where everything fell apart last night. I pour him coffee without asking. Black, 2 sugars, the way he's taken it since he was 16. He wraps his hands around the mug like he's cold. Freya doesn't know I'm here. I nod. Don't say anything. Let him find his words. She was up all night, he continues. Crying, then angry, then crying again. She called her mother, called her friends. Told everyone you'd been deceiving us for years, that you'd humiliated her, that you'd violated some kind of trust. He looks up at me. But Mom, we're the ones who should feel humiliated, aren't we? My throat tightens. What do you mean? We've been treating you like... He stops, starts again. I've been letting Freya treat you like you were less than her, less than us. Like you were this pathetic widow who needed our pity. And the whole time you owned our building. You were our landlord. You could have kicked us out or raised our rent or told us the truth at any moment, and you didn't. No, I say, I didn't. Why? His voice cracks on me. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think you were struggling when you're clearly not? I take a sip of my coffee. Think about how to answer. Because I wanted you to make it on your own, I finally say. I wanted you to earn your apartment, your life, your success without feeling like you owed it to me. And because I pause. Because I was testing her, I suppose. Testing whether Freya could respect someone she thought had less than her, whether she could be kind without an audience or a reason. She failed, Maddox says quietly. Yes, she did. He's quiet for a long moment. Then, I failed too, didn't I? I reach across the table, take his hand. You're here now. That's what matters. Freya wants me to demand an apology from you, he says. She thinks you owe her one for tricking her, for not disclosing that you own the building. And what do you think? He looks at our joined hands. I think I owe you about 1,000 apologies. For every time I let her insult you, for every time I made excuses instead of standing up for you, for turning into someone Dad wouldn't recognize. The mention of Virgil hits me hard. Unexpected tears prick my eyes. Your father would still be proud of you, I say. He'd be disappointed in some of your choices, but he'd be proud that you're here trying to fix it. Are we fixable? He asks. You and me? Yes, I say without hesitation. Always. But Maddox, I meant what I said last night. I won't be disrespected anymore. Not by Freya, not by anyone. If you're married to her, you need to decide what that means for us, for our relationship. He nods slowly. We're looking at our finances. Really looking at them for the first time. The new rent is $200 more than we're paying now, and we're already stretching to make it each month. We can't afford to stay. Then don't, I say simply. Find something you can actually afford. Something that doesn't require you to live beyond your means. Freya's going to hate that. Probably. But Maddox, you can't build a life on appearances. Your father and I learned that early. Real security doesn't come from impressing people. It comes from making smart choices, even when those choices aren't glamorous. He drinks his coffee, thinks. Freya's mother stopped speaking to us, he says. When we wouldn't trash you to her last night. When I wouldn't call you and demand you apologize. She called Freya an ungrateful daughter and hung up on her. I should feel satisfied by that. I should feel vindicated. Instead, I just feel tired. I'm sorry, I say, and I mean it. I know that's hard. Is it? He asks. Because honestly, Mom, I'm realizing that maybe Freya learned how to treat people from her mother. And maybe I've been so afraid of losing Freya's approval and her mother's approval that I lost myself. We sit in silence. The grandfather clock ticks in the hallway. The morning light shifts across the kitchen table. Everything feels fragile, breakable, like we're building something new from the shattered pieces of what was. I don't know what happens next, Maddox finally says, with Freya and me, with our marriage, but I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I've done, what I've allowed. And I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I stand up, walk around the table, pull him into a hug. He's taller than me, has been since he was 15. But right now he feels small, broken. Like the little boy who used to come to me when he was hurt. I love you, I say into his shoulder. No matter what happens next, I love you. He holds on tight, like he's afraid I'll disappear if he lets go. 3 months later, Maddox and Freya move out of Unit 4. They find a smaller apartment across town, 1 bedroom instead of 2, no doorman, no rooftop terrace, but something they can actually afford on their own. Freya writes me a note. Maddox brings it over one Sunday afternoon. It's short, typed, not handwritten. Darlene, I recognize that my behavior over the past 3 years has been unacceptable. I made assumptions about you that were incorrect, and I allowed those assumptions to guide my treatment of you. I apologize for the disrespect. I hope we can move forward. Freya. It's not warm. It's not particularly sincere, but it's acknowledgement. And for now, that's enough. I write back, also short. Freya, I accept your apology. I hope we can build a better relationship going forward, one based on mutual respect. Darlene. Maddox starts coming to Sunday dinners again. Sometimes with Freya, sometimes alone. When Freya comes, she's quieter, more careful. She compliments the food now, asks about the house's history, learns about Virgil and what we built together. It's slow, awkward sometimes, but it's better. 6 months after that night in the dining room, I'm sitting in the office at Thornhill Property Management. I don't come here often, usually Jasmine handles everything. But today, I'm reviewing applications for Unit 4C, the new tenants. There's a young couple at the top of the pile, both teachers. Combined income just barely enough to qualify. Application filled out carefully, references glowing, credit decent but not perfect. They remind me of Virgil and me 40 years ago, working hard, trying to build something, hoping for a chance. I approved their application myself. That evening, Maddox calls. Mom, Freya and I have been talking, really talking, about what we want our life to look like, about what matters. And, I prompt, and we're making changes, real changes. She's going to therapy. We're going to couples counseling. We're learning how to live within our means instead of trying to impress people who don't actually care about us. I'm proud of you, I say. And I mean it. I'm proud of you too, he replies, for standing up for yourself, for not letting us treat you that way anymore. Dad would have been proud too. After we hang up, I sit in my dated kitchen with my outdated furniture and my time capsule of a house. The same house Virgil and I built our life in. The same cabinets we chose together. The same foundation we laid brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. And I smile. Because Freya was wrong about everything. I'm not stuck in the past. I'm not clinging to old memories because I can't move forward. I'm standing on a foundation built from love and hard work and smart choices. A foundation solid enough to hold me up when everything else tries to knock me down. A foundation that will still be here long after the designer clothes go out of style and the fancy restaurants close and the people who judged me for living simply realize that simplicity was strength all along. If you've ever been treated like you're invisible, called worthless, or had to fight for what's yours, you still have power. Your worth isn't measured by what you show off. It's measured by what you build in the quiet, by what you protect, by what you refuse to let others take from you. To anyone fighting their own battle right now, your comeback is already being written. Stay quiet, stay sharp, and let your actions speak. The people who underestimate you today will remember you tomorrow. Just wait. What lesson hit you hardest from this story? And if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have told them sooner, or would you have kept the secret even longer? Tell me honestly, how would you have responded when someone you loved made you feel small in your own home? Don't stop here. Click the next video on your screen right now and watch another story from our channel. There's more truth, more justice, more moments that'll make you feel something real. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. See you in the next one.